Hi, welcome back to Space Thoughts. I wanted to jump in today and talk about regulation, and in particular, there's what the media is coming out with now on terms of regulation in light of what happened last week with that commercial sub that was diving in Titanic, and now that we know actually imploded and uh, killed the five people on board. Obviously, horrible tragedy. There's a lot of controversy about this right now, and some of it's probably well deserved. And there's a lot of experts chiming in about about the sub. But one of the things that really was coming into play as that was this quote: this lack of regulations for this injury of deep ocean diving, and apparently the sub wasn't certified. Uh, there were ideas of about whether this was legal, and the lack of regulations that might have prevented this. And of course, a lot of this is going to come out, and there'll be an investigation, and there'll be some determinations made. Now, I just want to come right out and say, I don't think if this sub had tried to launch from the U.S., I don't think it would have happened. And I think U.S. regulations would have probably kept something like this away from happening. I believe this actually launched out of Canada. But again, this isn't really an expose or a video about the deep sea diving tourist industry, as much as it is about the commercial non-governmental space agency, in particular space tourism. Because one of the things I was thinking about during this whole situation, as as it was playing out, is that somebody's going to make the leap from this to the non-governmental sector, especially in this political environment right now, where Congress is reconsidering whether to renew the moratorium, which expires in October of this year. Basically, a moratorium for no further regulations of commercial space activities, and this has been in place for quite a long time. I believe since 2016, 2017, that time frame. So this is its own little political fiasco in the backdrop. But unfortunately, this is coming in where right now, I predicted the media would jump in on this and connect it to the commercial space industry, and that's exactly what they're doing. This is a sample article that I saw, and actually this came out today, and it basically talks about the implosion that happened with this commercial sub, and starts linking it immediately to the commercial space industry. Now, the big thing is, well, if this could happen to the sub, what about outer space? Given this is another quote extreme environment or extreme adventure, and obviously these things are high risk, and they have they all sign a waiver. Many states have these waivers in place for basically saying, you're going to hold them harmless, you can't sue them. These haven't been tested these haven't been tested legally yet. Of course, all of these would be held in a federal district court if and when they actually got initiated. I know Virgin Galactic is going to be resuming its flights, believe, in the 27th of this month, and it's going to do another one in August to start getting through some of its commercial manifest. But my big problem is here is people are immediately jumping on and saying, comparing apples to apples, these two types of activities, and really they are different. I'm not going to comment on regulations about the commercial sub area. People are going to talk about what the improper design of the sub. Fine, let somebody else do that. That's not my area of knowledge or expertise. But what I am going to talk about is, why are we jumping on the commercial space industry? Now, again, like I said, it's a very, very dangerous industry. There's the potential for catastrophic failures and loss of human life. We saw that when there was a few years back during testing of certain of these spacecraft. But now we're in a political environment where we want to get rid of this. We want to get rid of this moratorium, and the Committee on Commercial Space for the FAA, Comstock, at their last meeting, they actually discussed about what types of regulations they would like to see in place, and and I know Rand also did a study that basically came out and talked about some of the guidelines that could be implemented, the FAA, that could be implemented once the moratorium is over. So here's the problem: I'm not against regulation, but what I am against is reactionary over-regulation. And I think right now, with the emotions running high over what happened with the Titan submersible, transmitting that immediately, like the media is doing right now, and whipping up a frenzy for the commercial space industry, I think we're going to have a tendency of over-regulating it as opposed to taking a logical, unemotional look at the industry and saying, where can we make improvements? So if you read this article, one of the experts in here and say, well, under regulation can kill industry as much as over regulation. Well, again, that's his opinion, but the idea is not to have under regulations or over regulation, but just finding that sweet spot. And I think that's going to be difficult, especially in this environment right now, as the media takes onto this even further and whips it up, social media, what have you. Regrettably, we're getting back into an emotional state, thinking with our emotions, well, not thinking, and using our emotions instead, and whipping and doing something, just taking really, overstepping drastics. I think a good example of this was ITAR. ITAR was based on some mistakes of certain technologies, rocket technologies getting transferred to the Chinese because of a massive failure they had launching an Intelsat satellite. And immediately Congress swooped in and basically brought this new thing called ITAR on export restrictions. Now, export restrictions aren't bad. I think ITAR has its uses, but it was really, in my opinion, an overreaction to the problem instead of just going in and looking at it and tweaking it. And unfortunately, when we get into politics, emotions run, ideals run, as opposed to logical thinking and looking at what's really needed instead of just laying down a bunch of rules or a bunch of laws that people feel they should be implemented without really taking a cold, hard look at it. And I think that's what's missing. And of course, it doesn't help with, in my opinion, the media really whipping this up. Again, I'm not against regulations as long as it's common sense. And in fact, the commercial space industry, space tourism does have regulations. Before Virgin Galactic or Blue Origin could have got their launch licenses for their two respective spacecraft, they both had to jump through a lot of hoops with the FAA and satisfy their how can you say, their concerns with their respective spacecraft, with Virgin having a little bit more problem because of the complexity of its launch system. But right now we're in a position where they're going to, I really feel we could get into a point where being carte blanche, regulate the industry and, without really looking at it and then seeing and then once you put the regulations down, it's hard to really back them off. In other words, getting prescriptive instead of just looking at performance-based regulations. Again, that's a whole other discussion that I won't get into here. So I just wanted to drop this video just to, emphasize this. The media is really latching onto this. And when they go hold of something like this, they're not going to let go of it easy. So my concern, my comment, my urgings is to let's look at this logically. Let's not try and compare what happened with the Titan disaster with what's going on with non-governmental commercial space tourism, because like I said, this is what happened there is going to get investigated, is going to get analyzed, and it's probably going to be regulated in some form of another so it doesn't happen again, although it may not prevent it from happening again. I guess the only way to prevent it from not happening again is not do it again. And I think we're getting dangerously close to actually getting that sentiment here in the commercial space industry. And if you don't want an accident to happen, you don't do the activity to begin with. So that's all I got right now. I mean, just a quick video just to talk about this because I've seen this bubbling up, and I think it's going to get into a big angry froth very soon with the media just pumping this up and social media churning out a lot of things with experts jumping online and inflaming the situation more than it really needs to be. Again, regulation isn't bad, but over-regulation is. And I think we're more leaning towards over-regulation instead of common sense. Let's look at what's really needed or what isn't needed and go from there. So until next time, have a good day.